The sky was a dull gray that morning, the church bells tolling in the distance, carrying the weight of the moment with each somber chime. A crowd of mourners gathered, moving slowly, their heads bent in sorrow. Among them stood a little girl, her small frame barely visible next to the coffin that held the only family she had ever truly known, her father. He had been her rock, her protector, the one who filled her nights with comforting stories and wiped away her tears. He had promised that no matter what happened, she would never be alone. But that promise had been shattered forever. As the final shovels of dirt fell onto his grave, little Emily's world broke, and the silence of that moment echoed louder than anything else. Clutching her teddy bear in her trembling hands, Emily's face was puffy from hours of crying, still unaware that the pain she felt was just the beginning of a much deeper sorrow. Whispers filled the air, mourners muttering about the cruelty of fate. But there was one person who stood nearby, her expression cold, her eyes sharp with impatience. Emily's stepmother. Dressed in black, she appeared every bit the grieving widow, but inside her there was no grief, only bitterness and resentment. She had never wanted Emily, never accepted her as part of the life she had tried to build with her father. Now, with the man who had protected her gone, there was nothing left to stop her. As the funeral came to an end, Emily's teddy bear was soaked with her tears. Her stepmother's voice sliced through the air, the words so icy they seemed to freeze the very air around them. "You don't belong here anymore." The words rang in Emily's ears, but before she could understand their full meaning, her stepmother's actions took over. Emily was dragged back to the large house that had once been a place of warmth and love, but now felt like a cold, unfamiliar prison. Her stepmother wasted no time. Clothes were ripped from her drawers, thrown carelessly into an old suitcase, and unceremoniously tossed out onto the driveway, as though Emily were nothing more than an unwanted piece of baggage. "Please, Mommy, forgive me." Emily's voice cracked as she begged, though she had done nothing wrong. She thought that maybe, just maybe, if she said the words, her stepmother would change her heart. But instead, a bucket of cold water was dumped over her, drenching her tiny body in the chilling spray. Her tears mingled with the cold water running down her cheeks. Passers-by watched but said nothing, too afraid to intervene. A man across the street shook his head sadly but quickly turned away, unable to watch any longer. The door slammed shut behind Emily, leaving her kneeling on the driveway, her suitcase spilled open beside her, her teddy bear lying forgotten in the dirt. The sun was high, the air filled with the sounds of summer, but to Emily, it felt like the coldest day of her life. Just when it seemed the world had abandoned her completely, a sleek black car pulled up at the edge of the driveway. The door opened, and a tall man stepped out. He was dressed in a sharp suit, his presence commanding, but there was something in his eyes that was more powerful than any wealth or status: empathy. His name was Alexander, a millionaire businessman known only by reputation in the town. But for Emily, he was about to become much more than a stranger. He'd been on his way to a meeting when he saw Emily, abandoned, humiliated, standing in the driveway, her tiny form trembling in the cold. Something inside him snapped. He remembered his own childhood, the nights spent alone after losing his mother, the sting of being rejected by those who should have cared for him. Without hesitation, he crossed the street and rushed toward the little girl. Emily looked up, her heart momentarily hopeful, thinking it was her father, returned to rescue her. But it wasn't him. It was Alexander. Without a second thought, he knelt beside her, ignoring the puddle of water at his feet, soaking his expensive suit. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and with a voice filled with firm compassion said, "This ends here. No one will ever treat you like this again." His words seemed to hang in the air, a promise of protection, a vow to ensure Emily would never again suffer what she had just endured. The stepmother, hearing the commotion, rushed outside, her face contorted in anger. She shouted insults at Alexander, calling Emily a burden, telling him she wanted nothing to do with the girl. But Alexander did not flinch. He stood tall and looked her in the eye, If you can abandon her after her father's funeral, then you don't deserve to be called a mother. I will take her. From this day forward, she is no longer unwanted." The crowd that had gathered gasped in shock, the words hanging in the air. The stepmother froze, the realization dawning on her that she could not fight him, not because of his wealth, but because of the unshakable authority and strength in his voice. With a huff, she turned away and slammed the door shut behind her. For Emily, that slam was no longer a rejection, it was freedom. Alexander carefully picked up her suitcase, retrieved the teddy bear from the ground, and gently took Emily's trembling hand. For the first time that day, she felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. Together, they walked toward the car, leaving behind the house that had once been her home but had now become a place of cruelty and abandonment. The days that followed were not easy. Emily struggled with nightmares, waking up in tears, fearful that she would once again be left alone. But Alexander never wavered. He was patient with her, always there when she needed comfort. He hired tutors to help her with her studies, provided her with clothes that fit her small frame, and most importantly, he gave her the one thing she needed most: love. He would sit with her at night, read her stories, and remind her every day that she was wanted. Slowly, the light returned to her eyes. Her laughter, once lost to grief, began to return, and the little girl who had once been abandoned on a cold driveway began to smile without fear. The town that had once looked away now began to notice. They whispered, not about cruelty, but about compassion. They saw how Alexander, despite his immense wealth, valued kindness above everything else. They saw how Emily, once abandoned and discarded, had blossomed into a symbol of resilience and hope. Months later, on a bright afternoon, Emily stood by her father's grave, holding a small bouquet of flowers. She whispered softly to him, telling him not to worry, that she was safe now. Alexander stood a few steps behind her, giving her space, but ready to support her if she needed it. As the sunlight broke through the clouds, it illuminated them both. And although her father was gone, Emily finally felt like she had found a new home, not in a house, but in the heart of someone who truly cared.